This video is going to review the customization of your balance sheet and income statements when using People's Choice Accounting Desktop. You can reference if you go to your Help menu here and click User's Manual and go to page 50 of the User's Manual. It'll give you a description of adding accounts and how you can set up groups and so forth. That will be shown here in this video. So you would go into the chart of accounts, and in the chart of accounts there's where your accounts are divided up into assets, liability, equity, net asset, equity, revenue, cost of goods, expense, other revenue, other expense. So within each category there's a group type down here. So for an asset, and you can customize these group types. If you want group A to be just assets, and however you want to subtitle, because what it's going to do is how you group these, they'll subtotal on the balance sheet accordingly as they're assigned. So each chart of account, when you go into chart of account setup, you have your account number, obviously, your checking account, the sub account, and then the group type. So this one is assigned to current assets. So some of the other accounts would be assigned to fixed assets and other assets. But you have this grouping code within each category. So for instance, in the liability, some have current liabilities, some just will have a separate group just called payroll liabilities, and of course long-term debt. So however you want to group and subtotal within the liability section of the balance sheet. And then for the income statement, you have the same thing. Here you just have one group type, but if you wanted to break your revenues or income into categories like we did for the balance sheet, you could add a B here, and so you'd have different subtotals. And same thing for cost of goods sold. That's not typically. And then for your expense account, you can have the same thing. If you want to break down your payroll expenses or office expenses into groups and subtotal, you would do the same thing when setting up a new account. So if you go in and make these changes, the thing you'll want to do, though, after you've made the changes, is to auto sequence, because this will sequence the order that the account shows up within the group. So if you've reassigned an account to a different group, or you're adding a group, and the other thing that is necessary is if you have a group, you can have an account chart of accounts without any groups. But if you are using a group, then you have to assign all accounts within that, like in this case expenses, to a group, and they could all be to A, but then you resequence. But if you leave one of them blank and don't assign them, then that account won't get included on in this case, the income statement. So having done that, when you are the next level of customization of the report is when you go in to the balance sheet, you can click on the Advanced button, and there's a Sections and a Header Footer. So if you click on the header footer, if you don't want to call it a balance sheet, you want to call it something else, you can type in whatever you want instead of a balance sheet here, and then it can either be centered or it can go left justified, right justified. And that's the same for each section here. So you can change the footer and the header, the name of the report, a header title, and a footer title. So that's one option. In terms of the sections, if you want to relabel something, instead of calling it asset, you could type in something here. I'll be doing another video where I'm setting it up where we basically a cash basis during the course of the year, but they generate a balance sheet at the end of the year, and use that section to especially on the income statement, so that if it's used as a bookkeeping system, cash flow, I use that other income and other expenses and instead rename it And where I do that is on the income statement side of things. So on the income statement, you also have the option in the format tab. There's 3 different levels of how the revenue and expense, net income, revenue, cost of goods. So there's, depending on which one of these fits your needs, that's going to be the format of the income statement. So you can change that there. In terms of the sections, and this is where I was alluding to that Schedule C, that I would set up a Schedule C for the expense accounts. But in the other revenue and other expense, I've labeled it other receipts and other disbursements. And so they're not, tax deductible, they're not part of the revenue income statement. And then having said that, I lay it out to where the gross profit and the income is the taxable income, but then the net, I changed this net income loss to cash flow. It's like what was done in People's Choice Classic, where it was a recap of receipts, a receipt and disbursement recap, which is essentially a cash flow. It includes all money coming in, including no proceeds, and it includes all disbursements, including no payments that get put into this other revenue, other expense section. So there's where you can play with that, and then you can also customize like you did in the other one with, if you want to call it an income statement other than an income statement, you change it here, center it left justified, and then here's if you want a header and footer, you can put in the header here and the footer here, and here's where you select whether you want it to show up on the statement. So we'll just generate, I think I got to do it for last year in this data set. So 3 print. So you can see what I mean. This category A in that chart of accounts puts the accounts in there, and then total of category A. And same with the revenues. We just had one grouping code as far as the balance sheet goes. Here's where, so if you had current assets, all the accounts in the current assets, total current assets, all the accounts assigned to fixed assets, subtotal, and then the grand total assets. And same with the liabilities and long-term debt. So if you recall how the grouping codes were set up and the chart of accounts set up, you can see how it sections off those accounts and subtotals by that grouping code. So that's a kind of quick overview. And if you want to have the account number on the balance sheet, you can check this box. But the header and footer sections can also be modified. So that's a brief overview of how you can customize the layout of your balance sheet and your income statement. And like I said, it's also referenced starting on page 50 of the user's manual.